Game. All right, we are just about ready to play. Let's take a quick peek at the different phases that comprise a turn in this game. So you take turns, and you will go in order through these phases. There's first you'll do the actions phase, where you get your action dice, you roll them, and then you can choose to place them on any in-play cards that activate the card actions. Then we move on to the offspring phase, where we roll the offspring die, and we hope to be able to increase our animal population. Then there's the destruction phase, where we roll the destruction die. So those are those two dice over there. The red one I've designated as the offspring die, and then the yellow one is the destruction die. So in the destruction phase, you roll the destruction die, and then you will add the destruction card, or the in this case the deforestation tile, to the environment, right? So those tiles over there. And then we'll draw a card from the impact deck. That's this deck right over here. That is a very nasty and mean deck, and we don't like that because everything that comes out of that deck is bad for us. And then finally, we'll have an upkeep phase where we draw a new action card from our deck, and then turn passes to the next player. And then you keep on going until you get to the times of the year when it's time to see if you got enough votes from the ambassadors to be able to win the game. And because we're playing two players, that means we're going to play all the way to at least year 8. So we will have at least 8 turns of play for these two players before we'll be able to see if we actually get enough votes to be able to win the game. All right, very last piece of setup I'm going to do, very important. I needed to set up my little dice rolling area that I got from a thrifted game called Sharpshooters. Bought that from the thrift store for, I don't know, about $3. And I have this very nice area to roll my dice. Okay, so let's get started with the first player's action phase. So I'm going to start with the philanthropist. I'm going to take his turn marker, and I'm going to place it over here on the year marker to indicate that it is currently his turn. And then we are going to take his dice, and we are going to roll them. And what do we got? We've got a 1, and a 4. Okay, so just for now, I'm going to place his dice over here on his card, not changing the results that he got. So he's got a 1, and a 4. Okay, so what does this look like? We need to take these dice, and we need to place them on some action spaces where they can do some good. Now, here are some restrictions. You may not place your die on an action if one of your own dice is already there. That is a general rule. There's one exception, which we'll talk about later. And if there are any other dice on that action, then the die you are placing must display the highest number. So for instance, if I wanted to place a die on this plan card here, which allows me to play one card, if the other player already had a die here with a 3, for instance, then I wouldn't be able to place this 1. I'd have to be able to place this 4 to be able to use that spot. So that is kind of like a basic rule of the dice placement here, is you always have to place a... if there's another die, you have to place your die that the value has to be higher. Okay. All right. So what are we going to do? Right now, he's got a couple of 1s, and he's going first. So there's no other dice there for him as well. So that is actually a very nice thing. I'm going to go ahead. Oop. You know what? I forgot a piece of setup. I think I'd have to draw a starting hand for each of my players. So let's pause for a moment, and I'll come back once I've drawn a starting hand. Okay, I caught myself in time. So you start the game with a starting hand of 2 cards each drawn from your deck. So in the case of the philanthropist, he's got a dividends card and an adopt an animal card. And the zoologist is starting with this research card and with this protest card. And so, for example, if I choose to, let's move on, let's go back to the philanthropist's turn here. Let's say I wanted to place this 1 on this plan space, And the benefit for that action is, and we can go ahead and zoom in so that you can see that, is that it would allow me to play one card, right? So if we did that, it would allow me to play one card, which means that I would take a card from my hand over here, and then I would play it, whatever that was. And this gives me an opportunity to explain a little bit more. So you guys already know what action means, right? If that was if I played this card, then that would go to the action zone over there on to the right of the game board. Now here's a different kind of card with a different kind of effect. If I choose to play this one, it says once, which means if I choose to play this card right away, I will gain the benefit that is listed here. In this case, gain $4 million, which is very nice. I think I will actually do that. And then you discard this card right away. You don't hang on to it, so that's a one-time benefit, and that's why that keyword is once. So that's actually what I think I'm going to do right now. The Philanthropist, I hope, based on the name, that he's good at earning money. So I placed a die here, and I can play one card. So the card that I'm going to choose to play is this Dividends card, and I discard that right away, but I gain $4 million. So I'm discarding this card over here, where I'm going to discard right over there. And I'm going to grab 4 money tokens here, indicating that the Philanthropist has now earned $4 million. Very nice. That was my first action. Now, I still have 2 other dice to place. What can I do? Let's take a quick look at our, deeper look at our actions here. So the basic actions that are on the board, we've got relocate. That will move one animal 1 space. That doesn't help me right now because I don't need to move any animals. We've also got replant. Pay $1 million, then remove 1 destruction tile that is not adjacent to an animal. Right now there's no destruction tiles on the board, so I'm not going to use that. I've already placed a die on the plan space, so I can't use that again this turn. And there's a social media campaign space, which has no limits. So that limit we talked about earlier in the other spaces where you can only place 1 of your die per turn, in the social media campaign, you can use this as many times as you want per turn. You also don't have to respect if there's another player's die here, you have to only place a higher one. That's a free-for-all over there. And that would, if we use that, it would allow us to gain either $1 million or draw an additional card. Now let's look at the actions, additional actions that were placed earlier at the start of the game. We've got canvassing, and that will, if we pay $3 million, we will add 3 influence to a single ambassador. We haven't really done anything with the ambassadors yet, so I don't think it's time to do that. And finally, volunteer. That action will allow us to discard both this volunteer card and 1 active persistent impact. A very nice card for later in the game, not really useful for right now. So, all of this talking to say, where am I going to place my next die? I think I want to... What do I want to do? I am going to place it here on the social media campaign, and I'm going to gain another $1 million. So the Philanthropist now has $5 million. Very nice. And I have 1 more die, and I have to choose where to place it. And also, this is the part of the strategy here. This is a 4, which means it's a fairly high number. This might make it harder for my teammate, the zoologist, because if I wherever I place this, she will now have to place a die higher than this 4 to be able to use that space. So that also factors into your strategy when you are choosing where to place dice. I think actually, you know what, for now, I'm going to go ahead and place it on that very first space over there, which is the relocate space. We can move 1 animal 1 space. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. I will place the die over here, and I'll show you why in a little bit. I'm going to choose to move this tiger over here from this row up to this row, and I'll explain why in a little while. But right now we've got 2 tigers in the same space here, here, and here, and I will explain why that is going to help me a little later on. Okay. All right, we are done with the Philanthropist's action phase. So now, based on our handy-dandy rules here, we now move on to what's called the offspring phase. And this is where my evil plan will come to fruition. It's actually not an evil plan, it's a very good plan. So the way the offspring phase works is you count the number of mating pairs you have on the board. That's essentially spots on the board where there are two animals sharing the same space, right? So, or two or more animals sharing the same space. So, for example, if there were 4 here, that would be 2 mating pairs, etc., etc. So I have 1, 2, 3 mating pairs. And the way that works is I now add 1 to that total. So my mating value is 4, right? And so now I take this mating die, and if I can roll a number that is less than or equal to 4, which is my target value, then I produce 1 new animal. I produce 1 new offspring, and I place that on the board. So let's go ahead and see that now. So I have to get a 4 or less. And mating die, yes, we rolled a 1. That means that we add a new animal to the board. Now, that animal gets placed adjacent to one of the mating pairs. Right, so place the offspring on an empty space that is adjacent to a mating pair. So I'm going to go ahead and place that tiger right over here. There is our new baby tiger. Very good. And so that was a successful mating phase, and that was a justification for why earlier I moved that tiger. So that explains that. So after the offspring phase, we then move on to the destruction phase. And in the destruction phase, we'll choose a row or column with at least 1 tiger, and then we will roll the destruction die. That's that yellow die over there. And then based on the result, we will place a deforestation tile. And then if there is a tiger in that where we place that tile, a tiger or tigers, then unfortunately they are removed from the habitat. They're placed back in their supply. Basically, it means that destruction, deforestation killed our tigers. So for this, I want to be able to choose a row or column with the fewest number of tigers that could potentially be affected by destruction. So you know what? Let's choose this top row over here right now that has 1 tiger. So if we want to result 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, 5. I'm sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We don't want a 2. All right, so we're going to go ahead and roll this die, and whatever it is, we don't want to see a 2. We get a 1. At least it's not a 2. So we'll get one of these destruction tiles over here, and we'll place it in the first space, and now that means that that space has been destroyed. Okay, now we move on to what's called the impact phase. In the impact phase, we play the top card from the impact deck and any persistent impacts. So this is my least favorite part of any turn. So let's take a look at this top card of the impact deck and see what it says. So this is a tiger sighting tile. This is an instant impact tile. So this card doesn't have any effect on its own, but if you had any persistent impacts in play, this would trigger it. And if you had, for example, 3 or 4 persistent impacts in play, this would trigger all of them in a cascade, which is very, very bad news indeed for us. But for right now, we don't have any persistent impacts, so we follow this text here. If 0 persistent impacts are triggered by this card, then draw and resolve the next impact. So we'll discard this first impact here, and then we'll draw the next impact card as directed. It's another tiger sighting. So once again, we have to discard that and draw. Basically, we'll keep drawing until we get something that's not a tiger sighting. By the way, who shuffled this deck? Because it's a 3rd tiger sighting in a row. You know what? This is getting annoying. As another tiger sighting, I don't like that. Okay, here is a card. This is called fragmentation. Fragmentation is when human development causes a separation between connected tiger territories. This is a persistent impact card. So later on, when a tiger sighting enters play, The bad part here is we will lose one animal that's adjacent to a deforestation tile. So we'll place that there for now. But later on, if a tiger sighting comes out, guess what? That tiger over there that's adjacent to this deforestation or destruction card is going to be killed. So we don't want that to happen. So that tiger is currently in danger because of this persistent impact card. So we are going to have to take that into account and figure something out for that tiger to kind of save them from harm a little later on. Okay, and that completes our impact phase. So now we move on to the upkeep phase. In the upkeep phase, we'll draw a new action card and then pick a player with a turn marker to go next. Okay, so it's still the philanthropist's phase, and so he was going to go ahead and draw a new card. Let's see what that card is. It is Sign a Petition. It's an action card. It will allow you to add one influence to an ambassador. Okay, and now it becomes the zoologist's turn. So we'll take the zoologist's turn marker and we will place it on top of the philanthropist's turn marker on year 1. And that is a very kind of handy way to be able to tell who's, like if you ever get lost, it's like, whose turn is it? Have you gone already? Have you not gone already? The way to tell very quickly is to be able to look at your card, your player board rather, is my turn marker here? If it's not here, and that means here in year 1, I'm either in the process of or already taken my turn. So that's a nice little thing to do there. And then we will start all over again. This time for the zoologist, we're going to go and take the zoologist through the actions phase, offspring phase, destruction phase, impact phase, and upkeep phase. Okay, so let's do the zoologist's action phase. So in the action phase, we take our action dice. If they were out, we would have taken them. If they were already placed on actions, we would have taken them. Now let's go ahead and roll them and see what we get. Okay, what do we got? We've got a 2, we've got a 5, we've got a 6. This is actually a pretty good roll for the zoologist for right now. So we're going to go ahead and place the dice on their board while we make our decisions about where we want to place these dice. So what's going on right now? We have one tiger that's in danger, and we got to figure that out. We got to be able to move that tiger, and we do have a action here which allows us to relocate, which will allow us to move an animal 1 space. And even better, even though the philanthropist has a 4 die on that, the zoologist, if we can zoom out here, if I can learn how to use the camera, actually has 2 dice that are higher than that 4, which means that the zoologist is able to use that action. And in fact, I think that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to take this 5 and I'm going to place it on this relocate space, action space, to be able to move one animal 1 space, because I want to get this tiger potentially out of harm's way. So I'm going to move you here, and that makes another mating pair. So mating pairs, having multiple mating pairs is good for the mating phase because it increases your chances of having offspring. But as you can see, it's also bad because if in the destruction phase, a destruction tile gets, this gets chosen for the placement of a destruction tile, we would lose 2 tigers rather than just 1 in one fell swoop. So it's a risk. You can get a reward by adding the number of tigers, increasing the number of tigers in your habitat, but you could also lose 2 times the number of tigers. So I think that's a nifty piece of game design, risk-reward right over there. But anyway, enough about geeking out over game design. We've still got 2 dice to place over here. You know what? I haven't done anything with respect to our ambassadors. So I should start trying to acquire some influence now. But right now, the zoologist doesn't have any money. So maybe it makes sense for the zoologist to get some money. So I'm going to take this 2, and I'm going to place it on the social media campaign. And this is going to allow the zoologist to gain $1 million. So here's the $1 million, and I'll place it on the zoologist's card. All right. And then we have one more die to place. It's a 6. So where is the best place for this? Well, there is a very interesting card right over here that we can take a look at. That is that volunteer card that we placed earlier. And it says discard both this volunteer card and one active persistent impact card. And as you'll recall from turn 1, we do actually have a persistent impact card. So I don't like it. I want to get rid of it. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this 6 and I'm going to place it on this action, which means we have to discard this card right now. So we'll lose that action for right now. I'm going to leave the zoologist die over there. So this gets discarded. But we also get to discard this persistent impact card here that we don't like. So that gets discarded as well. Great. So all of the zoologist's dice were placed for year 1. And so now we move on to the offspring phase. So let's go ahead and take our offspring die and let's do our little mental calculation here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 mating pairs, plus 1 is 5. So we have to roll 5 or lower to be able to get another offspring. And we rolled a 3. Great. So we get another offspring. We just have to be able to place that offspring adjacent to any mating pair. So I'm going to go ahead and try to choose this spot right over here. And we have a new tiger, new baby tiger has joined our habitat. Now we move on to the destruction phase. Roll the destruction die to add to the environment. So now I have to choose a row or column that has a tiger in it. One tiger. So right now, that's very clear to me that it's this row right here, and I don't want to roll a 5. So let's roll this destruction die. Let's get that offspring die out of there. Roll the destruction die. We rolled a 6. Phew! So we didn't roll a 5. So at least we didn't lose a tiger. But we placed this destruction tile over here, and it is beside this tiger. So that tiger is in danger right now. So we don't want that. So we're going to have to deal with that at some future point. Okay, take these dice and move them away. Now we move on to the impact phase, which is take the top card of the impact deck and then resolve. And what do we got? We've got government upheaval. The Soviet Union had strict anti-poaching controls. Its collapse made poaching Siberian tigers easier. So this is a persistent impact. When a tiger sighting card enters play, remove one influence from one ambassador. So this card will affect our sway with the ambassadors once we start placing influence on them a little later on. So another persistent impact there. And then finally, we move on to the upkeep phase. We draw a new action card. So the zoologist will draw a new action card. There is, by the way, no hand limit, right? You can have as many cards as you want in your hand. What is the card that we just drew? This one is called Go to Work. It is an action card that's going to allow you to gain $2 million. That's fairly nice. I'm going to put that in the zoologist spot. And then pick a player with a turn marker to go next. Well, as you can see here, no turn marker, no turn marker. Both of